Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Tracy. I'm a mom to two amazing girls. I'm married and I'm a professor by training. And I love to cook, I love to read, and I'm a devoted Francophile. So I created this vlog as a way to chart my journey as I embark on a new project. I'm writing a new book as well as finishing up some other articles. And back in 2014, I had a blog that I used to chart my progress. And so I decided to do the same thing again. And I was really determined to ensure that if I did something public, as a kind of public diary, that I could use it as a way to motivate others. As the weeks go on, I'll tell you a little bit more about the project. But first, I want to kind of get into the new year, right? So, new year, new project, lots of goals. I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person anymore. I used to be in my youth. Now I'm really more about setting goals, realistic goals, short term goals, and long term goals. And so I have a goal over the next 7 months to flesh out at least two chapters of my new book in addition to a book proposal. And I'm hoping that as I do this, whomever subscribes to my channel, that you will hold me accountable. And I'm hoping that if you have a big project or you're trying to write a book, if you are in graduate school or if you're a junior, a faculty member, that we can take this journey together. I'm not actually a big fan of the term journey, but this process might be another way of thinking about it. Also, along the way, I'll tell you about some of the things that I'm doing personally, right? So, this is, yes, primarily about the process of writing a book, but also what I'm reading or things that I'm moved to talk about or compelled to talk about that are in the media. So, maybe I'll have some other things to say too, but this is me. This is our first blog. I'm so excited that I'm doing this. And I'll have to tell you, I toyed back and forth about whether or not I was actually going to do this. Should I just maybe put some things out on Instagram or use other platforms? But at the end of the day, hey, why not, right? There are 1,000 blogs out there. And I have found some of them to be quite helpful or just informative or entertaining. And so hey, I'm just putting my hat in the ring along with everybody else. So, like I said, goal setting is really important for me. And in order for me to write this book over the next 7 months, to begin writing the book, I need to have some clear goals. And so, aligned with this new year, my first goal is really about discipline. So, I have again about 7 months to write this book. And not writing the whole book, right? My goal is to write two chapters and begin the proposal for this new book. The book will take about 3 years. So the book is going to be an analysis of adoption in the UK years from the 1950s through to around the 1990s. And I'm looking particularly at transracial adoption. This research does require travel to the UK, which obviously, as we know, I can't do right now in the midst of COVID. And I'm really bummed because I actually received a grant. I wrote a grant application so I could go to the UK to do some research. So I didn't say in the beginning, but you can probably tell by the accent that I am British. British by way of Jamaica. Both of my parents were Jamaican. Well, my mother still is alive. My mother is Jamaican. My father was Jamaican. He's deceased. And I was born and raised in England, but I've been living here for a long, long, long time and working as a professor of literature here in New York. So, at any rate, I'm really interested in this a new project, and I've written two other books. My very first book was kind of boring, my opinion. But the first book was about how African American women authors appropriated classical Greek mythology. And truth be told, I really wanted to write my first book about Black British literature. At the time, I was in graduate school. I attended Howard University in DC. I wanted to write a book about Black British literature, but this was back in the very, very, very late 1990s, and the field was kind of burgeoning at that point. And my professors were concerned about my ability to get placement, to get a job. So they suggested that I write something that kind of get me in the door, and then down the line I could turn my attention to the topic, the subject that was important to me, right? Because it reflected my identity, my experience as a black woman or a black girl growing up in Hertfordshire. So anyway, fast forward, I wrote the first book, and then the second book, I wanted to write a book that was personal to me. I didn't want to write an academic text that I thought had no relevance to anyone beyond the academy. And so I chose to write a book about domestic workers. And this was personal to me because I had so many women in my family who worked as domestics. And when my mother first moved to America, these were the kinds of jobs that were available. And I, at first, started writing a book that was more so a kind of ethno-anthropological study, like oral narratives. And then I recognized, what are you doing? You are not an anthropologist. It's not what you do. You do literary theory, right? So I had to pivot and recognize, okay, the better way to do this actually would to be thinking about how women reflect these stories through literature. And so that's what I did. So I'm really proud of it. It took me quite a long time actually to finish. And so I'll say this. This will be my third full-length manuscript. I've written some, essays, and I've done some edited collections on Zadie. Actually, it's my fourth book, actually. But anyway, so like the previous book, this has meaning to me. It's personal to me as a black woman who grew up in England in the 70s and 80s. It's a story that I'm intimately connected with some of the struggles that these characters go through in the works that I'll be analyzing. And so I'm really excited to do this. With a book that requires some extensive research and travel to the UK, my process has slowed down a little bit. So I have started fleshing out the idea for the book. And I have a rough idea of the chapters. There'll be about 5 chapters in this book. And I started writing a paper as well. And writing the paper really helped to kind of solidify my ideas for one of the chapters and just kind of get me motivated. So that's just kind of a little teaser about the book. But let me now back up and talk about how I'm going to do this, what the process will be. So New Year, right? It's the first day actually of 2021. Thank goodness we all know how last year went. And I think many of us are looking forward to a prosperous and healthy and calmer and normal year. And we'll see how it plays out. We're at day 1. But at any rate, so this is what I'm hoping will be helpful to you. When I set out goals for a new year, not resolutions, but goals, I want them to be realistic, right? And I have short-term goals and long-term goals. My short-term goal over the next 7 months is to flesh out 2 chapters and begin working on my proposal. That's the short-term goal, right? The long-term goal would be obviously to finish the book. But I'm using these 7 months, right? These 7 months to, again, write 2 chapters and begin on a proposal. And then hopefully by the end of the year, I will have not only the 2 chapters in proposal, but maybe the beginning of a 3rd chapter. And we'll see. It would be great if I can squeeze in a trip to London, to the British Library. We'll see. Here in New York, I'm in New York based. We have the Schomburg Library, and they're pretty good in terms of their holdings of Black history globally. So this summer, I intend to go there. Being on sabbatical means also that, I don't have to teach. So I do have the time to sit down and get this done. The problem is, though, for me, I need to really map out my time. So the first thing for me is discipline. Discipline is important, right? I need to create a schedule and stick to it. A number of years ago, I participated in a program that was really helpful because I was worried back then when I was off that I would just squander 5 months, right? Not necessarily sitting around watching television or, going out shopping every day, but just kind of mismanaging my time. And so I participated in a kind of academic boot camp, and they really helped us kind of keep focused and motivated. And I want to share some of the tips that were really, really helpful. It was expensive as heck. And if you're interested, perhaps maybe I'll link below the name of the organization. But anyway, discipline is paramount. And so what I learned as part of the workshop also was, if you want to be disciplined, that's good, but you also need to be strategic about how you use your time, right? And so what they had us do is actually map out every second of our day, right? Every hour of the day. We had to write down every week, or you could do it for the month, how you spent your time in a day, and then block out chunks of time when you could actually get some work done. Initially, I thought, oh my God, am I really going to have to sit down and write down what I do every hour of the day? And so I was really resistant. But I did it and then realized, for someone who's always complaining, I'm always whinging, there's not enough hours in the day. Actually, there's a lot of time that's wasted, for me at least. There were pockets of time when I could have been working that I was doing laundry or I was cooking or, always something that was productive. But there were times when I could have moved some of those activities to other times in the day and just blocked out a time for just sitting down, focusing and writing. So as much as that was a tedious task, it is, I would say, paramount. And I would encourage you all to do the same. Sit down, block out how you use your day, right? From the minute you get up to the moment you go to bed. And it wasn't about just identifying times to write. It was also about, feeling fulfilled, right? So it should, even though writing can be not just solitary, but, challenging, right? It can be painful. It can be really just annoying sometimes. And when you get stuck, you want to do everything but right. Because you just feel, at least for me, that I'm just going in circles and circles and circles. So they also wanted us to account for how we use our time so that we could also reward ourselves, right? And when you feel good about yourself, you can be a little bit more motivated to do your work. And so when you're writing down how you account for your time in a day, yes, you're looking to find time to write, but what else do you want to do? So what I would like to do this year, in addition to make some headway on this book, is also find more time to read. I love to read, and I'll be sharing with you what I'm reading. I've got a huge list of books that I want to read this year. So I'll be sharing that with you too at some point. But I do want to find time, really find time for reading. It's hard as an academic to find time to read, right? Because we're reading so much. You're reading for class, or you're reading for other people. You're reading dissertations. And so finding that time just read for pleasure is not something I always get to do unless I'm on break. So I'm really looking forward to reading. I am a gym rat, love to work out. My body doesn't really reflect that, but I do like to work out a lot. It's not a thing that, I do kicking and screaming. So obviously making time for that, which I always do actually. More time outdoors, that's something that I'm actually quite disciplined about. I go out almost every day, regardless of the weather. That's one of the advantages of actually being born and raised in England, is that, whether it rains or it's chilly, who cares? We go out. We're used to being outside, regardless of the weather. And I don't have hair issues, right? Worrying about it raining and my hair being messed up, because I am always in braids. So that's something else I'm disciplined about, that. Spending more quality time with my girls. I say this quite a bit, that I'm going to do this. It doesn't always happen, especially because I have teenagers. They have their own schedules, their own lives. Sometimes they want to be bothered. Sometimes they don't. But I really want to do some one-on-one with them time, right? Being disciplined, creating goals, manageable goals, right? So note that I said I want to use the next 7 months to write 2 chapters and begin to flesh out a proposal. I think that that is realistic. I mean, initially I thought, okay, I'm going to use this time to flesh out the whole book. And I said, I do have the 5 chapters. I have a sense of what each chapter will do. That could change, obviously. But I don't want to be too confident, right? I don't want to set myself up for failure. So I'm being realistic about my time. 2 chapters for me is realistic. It's not as though when you're on leave that the rest of your life stops, right? I still have 2 kids who will be at home. One is in college, but she's working from home, and the other one is in high school. So I do have to tend to their needs, right, as soon as the clock stops. But I do have a large chunk of time in the daytime to focus on work. What works for me generally is not to sit and write from, do the Toni Morrison thing of getting up at 4 in the morning and working until 7. I do like to start working early. I'll say that. That works for me. I do like to start working around 7 or 8. One of the things that I kind of like to make clear is work is work. So if I'm reading, that's work. If I'm writing, that's work. If I'm just kind of brainstorming, that's work. Anything that's engaging with the work is work. That's kind of how I define work. But at any rate, I do work best earlier in the day. So I probably will start working around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I like to work in kind of segments of time. So I'll work from maybe 8 to 11, right? A good 3 hour block. And then I'll look at some emails or maybe, work out because I got to figure out how to squeeze my work in, right? And I don't work necessarily 8 to 11 for 5 days a week, right? I'll have designated days and build around my workout schedule as well. I like to work out actually early. Pledging to put in no less than 5 hours of work. I'll do the first half, early in the morning, and the second half before 2 p.m. So that's how I'm going to be breaking it up. And again, that might mean in the morning I'm doing mostly reading. Reading often helps me to write. It's just a process for me. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I have to read, right? Read something related, read some theory, read some articles that are related. That really helps get my own creative juices flowing there. And then maybe I'll write in the afternoon or vice versa. So that's what the plan is for now. Organization, discipline, structure, right? Knowing how to use your time well. And then I would say accountability. So while hopefully you will all, right, I'm really hoping that you will all tune in and encourage me along the way, as I'm hoping that as I'm working that it will motivate you to work. Accountability is really important. So it won't just be you, but I have some friends in my circle that know that I'm working on this book. And so it's important, right, to know that there's a community of people rooting you on. If you're toward the end of a project, though, that's been, dragging out for some time, that can be annoying, right? Because every time you see someone, they're like, how's it going? And then you're like, oh, God, they're going to ask me about the book. Or they're going to ask me about the dissertation. It just makes you feel like crap. Even though I'm writing an academic book, I think that the advice I'm giving you might also relate to someone who's writing, a play or a novel. And I have a novel I've been trying to write for years, and I'm hoping that I can actually use some time this year to get to that. But I think first things first, I have to, this is my short-term goal. Long-term, maybe this summer I'll get to that. I've been fleshing that out for a while, and I'll tell you about that at some other time. So those are my tips. You can look out for me probably about once a month. I also have a podcast that I co-host, so I take time to do that. I also do a 60-second reading that I started during COVID, that I have to do that. So unfortunately, as much as I'd like to do this like twice a week, it's unrealistic. But I'm thinking 3 times a week or at least once a month. So some of it will depend on the feedback I get. If people seem like they really like this, I'll keep doing more. If it seems like it's just enough to pique someone's interest, then I'll keep it I'll keep it to 3 weeks to once a month. But, you know, I'm a talker. I enjoy talking, and I have great friends and family that love to hear my ideas and love to hear what I'm talking about. But unless they're colleagues in the field, they don't necessarily benefit from my waffling on about work. So this is really for those who are in the struggle with me, writing on a big project and just want to know that you're not doing it alone. So thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this vlog, please subscribe. And we'll see how, if I reach 10 people, 10,000 people, I'm happy if it's inspiring and motivating you. So thank you. See you next time.